Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome to another segment of Miss Fit. Start living and thriving now with me, Dr. Natalie Forrest. And as you know, there are bunches of other amazing shows on Transformation TV. So go over there and look at it. But for today, you see this gentleman on the other side or on the flip side or right next to me on the screen. And that is an amazing person. And I know I always have amazing people, but this gentleman I met, about 5 years ago? And right away, there was just this feeling on my end of this person is real. And that is sort of, the introduction that I really want to give. This person is real. Every single thing that Dr. Jeffrey Magee has ever told me, has ever shared with me, has been real, has been direct. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. But it's always been direct and always, always helpful coming from his heart. And I can read his bio from one of his books. This is my favorite. But instead of doing that, Dr. Jeffrey Magee, I sometimes take the liberty of referring to him as Jeff. He has a lot of degrees. He has over 20 books at this point, I believe. He works for major people that you want to get to know. He has government contracts, and he works on a number of issues. One of the most important ones to me is performance and how you can keep your performance at a high level at all times. There are other issues that are related to that. He helps speakers become better speakers and create a speaking business. He helps business consultants like myself create better businesses. He gives you tips and advice that matter. And in addition to that, he travels the world, speaks across the world, teaches across the world. I think you said something like 20 languages your books have been published in.
Absolutely.
And he has magazines. He has a website. So that's Performance Magazine. And I talk about performance. So I want to introduce, without further ado, Dr. Jeffrey Magee, who in many ways, to me, is actually a misfit in the world that we live in. So Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the gracious introduction.
Well,
and it's fun to be with you and your viewers today or this morning, whenever they're watching you.
I know, it's getting so complicated. But since you mentioned that, this show, of course, just like all the other Transformation TV shows, is also on iTunes podcast. So you can even actually download and listen to Dr. Jeffrey Magee again and again. So today, I want to dive, obviously, into performance. But before we get to performance, can you tell people a little bit more of where you came from and how you ended up being such a mentor to so many people?
I appreciate that. I think for all of us, part of the architecture from birth to where we are today, whatever your age is, really is very similar. We all had some sort of an upbringing, good, bad, right, wrong, had one. We all had a chance to go to some sort of structured formal education or school, K-12, or you went on to a couple years of schooling after high school, or you received degrees. Right, wrong, good, bad. We all had that opportunity. We all had opportunity to work for people, have jobs. Some of us probably had jobs before legally we should have had them. So 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, we were working. So all of that, what I mean by architecturally is that, if you look at where you are today and you were to not get into the, pity party or the blame game or someone's, luckier than me, just push all that garbage to the side and just quickly inventory, your life up to today in terms of what experiences, who've been some of those people, good or bad, that have put imprints in your head that influence that internal dialogue that we have. That internal dialogue is critically important, as you know, Natalie, because every time any of us are confronted with a situation, an opportunity, a challenge, another person, it's those internal voices that kick in that have been conditioned and shaped throughout our life to whatever our age is, that really kind of kick in and tell us how we're going to respond or react to that stimulant or stimuli in front of us. Then you inventory the experiences you've had that you've initiated. Life gives us lots of paths. We've heard all those elements. And again, you talked about one of my books, and again, the newest version of Your Trajectory Code really is another way to answer that question. I mean, we're all on a trajectory. We all start at the same point. Let's take a 24-hour cycle. Every morning we all wake up, call that point A, We have two choices. We go down a trajectory B, which is derailment and dead end and challenges and frustrations. And sometimes we let emotions kick in, or we say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. Or we go down trajectory C, which takes us to success and its infinity. Well, what we all do is when we start out at point A, view that as a dot or maybe a thumbtack on a wall with two threads hanging straight down. If you took one of the threads and kind of tacked it up here at point B and the other one you tacked up at point C, well, there's a point that both those threads are leaving that thumbtack or point A where they're one together. But if you can recognize where you are at any given time and what you're about to do, is that going to take you towards B, derailment, then you have an opportunity at the beginning to make an adjustment, to recalibrate towards success. When you ask the question a little bit about my background, I hesitate to jump in and say, oh, I was raised on a farm in the Midwest of USA. And, in junior high school, we moved into a large city in the state that I lived in. And I was raised in a large family, and both my parents were middle-class working people. And some of us had an opportunity to go off to college and others didn't. And I went to college on a journalism and athletic scholarship, and that took me into journalism in Kansas City. And one day I recognized the advertising dollar dictates journalism, and most journalists are very bigoted, mean, ugly, disappointed, stressed out human beings. And I can be part of that. And you and I both can laugh because that's funny to look at, where we are today, 30 years later from that, and journalism hasn't changed. The advertising dollar dictates what's said. And I realized that was not who I wanted to be. And I went into business, much like yourself and some of your viewers, and you're kind of the businesswoman here. And I realized whether you're working for someone or you have the business and you're hiring people, it's understanding the architecture of how we all were raised and shaped that influences who we are and where we can go. And if you like where you are and you understand your architecture, you just keep enhancing it and you become even more effective and successful. If you don't like where you are, quit bitching about it, recognize the architecture that got you here, and you can instantly start to create change and change your trajectory and future. So that's a long way around introducing, tell me about my background without really going into my resume, because your listeners can go to my website, jeffreymagee.com, and read all that all day long.
Right. Now, and there's a lot to say. I mean, we just scratched the surface when it comes to all the things that you've done and how many people you've helped. You make it seem so easy. And we know it's not always that easy for an individual who is in that stage where they're trying to figure out, where do I go? Why is it not working? The architecture is sort of beginning to crumble. The imprints, as you call it, the patterns, as I call them, they're not sure that they even understand them. They're sort of like on autopilot. So if somebody feels somewhere within that something is not right, but I don't know what to do about it, and maybe they're somewhere out in a farm in the Midwest with no business consultants, no counselors, no coaches around, what would you advise them to do?
It's a great question. One way to kind of look at where you are and take inventory, think of a resume for a minute. Everyone can relate to this. If you think of a resume, there's sections that you fill out. If you have a LinkedIn profile and you were to follow the architecture of that profile and just answer all the questions you can, and don't worry about being humble, but really answer them. LinkedIn gives you probably the world's best resume builder out there because the questions it asks. Mm-hmm. But a typical resume starts with the obvious, your name. So get clarity of who are you, not someone else. Then it starts with, okay, what's your address? That helps to anchor you to, okay, where am I right now? And what are the opportunities where I am in this geography? And again, I might look at other geographies. And then it starts to say, okay, what are some of your top skill sets? And then the next thing on the resume is going to talk about education. Typically, what's the highest level of education attained, where, when, and what's the typical formula. And then it talks about, your last several jobs in reverse chronological order. And then it talks about references. If you think about that architecture there, that's a great way to start to answer your question. So wherever I am, whether I'm in a major city, in a suburb, or rural, wherever on the globe, not just USA, and I'm struggling because I feel like I'm in a rut or I've fallen into the gutter, and how do I get out of it? That was part of your question.
Right.
Resume. Start at the bottom. Who are the people that you know of stature? Because that's who your references should be. You don't want to put a bunch of freaking losers down there as references. I mean, birds of a feather flock together. Why hire you if everyone you put at the bottom looks like a bunch of schmoes also? So look at your references. I mean, do you not have anyone of stature you can talk to? I mean, your religious elder, your local political leaders, financial people, whoever. You have a bank account, go in there and sit down and say, I've got a bank account. I mean, how much money with you, but I'd like to talk to the manager, the president of this bank. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can figure out, getting advice from people. You bought a car. Who owns that dealership? They're probably successful. I mean, there's a lot. So just by thinking of references, those start to give you people you can talk to regain positive hope and get some maps from where you are to where you want to go. That's one. Think about your last jobs, any job you've had from now, past tense, and maybe you have to go back several years ago. Think about some of the people maybe you've worked with that owned the business or ran the business or were peers with you or subordinates to you that might have been rock stars as you measure what a rock star is. I mean, those are great people to reach out to or to call, or better yet, maybe you should have stayed in contact with them. And then you come back up to education. If the education you have is great, but it's no longer relevant to help you to be a relevant individual for today and tomorrow, you've got to be adding to your knowledge set. Benjamin Franklin had a classic line about the person who empties their purse into their head will never be bankrupt. I mean, a lot of people in our country and the planet are lazy. There's your tough love statement. And a lot of them are not just lazy, they're worthless because they're used to someone else carrying water for them. So that's not who you want to associate with, because misery loves company. Now I say that, and there's some statistics to back it up.
Right.
The Gallup organization recently did a study of thousands of businesses in the United States, which met tens of thousands of responders. And they basically found that 56% of the population pool are disengaged and complacent. They're happy with just whatever it is. And therefore, someone influences them to be proactive. That 56% have become proactive. But worse, turn on your local media. A lot of media, only thing they know how to do is to bitch, complain, and throw someone under the bus as if they're so righteous. Well, if you listen to negative people, you start to have the Chicken Little syndrome. Then a 15% of that 100% surveyed were actively disengaged. I mean, they live to complain and bitch every day. I mean, you share something good, they'll go out of their way to find a problem. And trust me, folks, I went to school poli-sci and journalism before I went after my MBA and my doctorate in psychology. Trust me, there is no righteous person out there. And if you think someone's great, give me 10 minutes. I'll show you how you can find a whole bunch of crap on them too. So these people are throwing mud balls out there. You might want to just kind of back up and laugh and say, he who throws mud balls probably has a whole bunch of mud in their own closet. So of that 56% that are complacent, 15% that are actively complaining, 29% are proactive. So again, think about, there's a ton of positive energy out there and positive success opportunities and trajectories. So again, for that person that's down and out, there's a lot of ways you can turn that around. I mean, watching this podcast over and over again, tapping into me, go back in the archives and look at Natalie's people she's interviewed and reach out to them, reach out to me. Go to my website, jeffreymagee.com. It's spelled right there on the screen. I mean, there's a pop-up box right there on the home page if you want to talk to me. Fill out some information. We're more than happy to visit with you. So, and one of the things that's interesting with the magazine that I do, Performance, I get phenomenal people to write for the magazine. Whether you like them or not, these are people that in their space are the best of the best. I mean, the last 3 presidents of the United States have written for me. So I don't know what your political views are. I mean, you don't become president by not being successful at something, because there's only one of them. And I have Indian tribal chiefs, I have musicians, and I have pro athletes, and I have New York Times bestselling authors, and everyone who writes for my magazine. So let's take your question to the other end of the pendulum. These are people that are perceived to be successful. Well, even successful people have crappy days and crap that flies out them. So how do you stay focused, compartmentalize, and keep moving forward? It's the same answer. So your resume is one pathway. Chapter 5 in my book, Your Trajectory Code, is probably the single most powerful answer to your question. It's a model I created years ago, and I've used it throughout my college textbooks, throughout my success books, throughout my training, speaking keynotes. It's called the Player Capability Index Model. So that's the last answer.
So there are lots of opportunities for people to get out there and do it. Is one of the hurdles something that I just want to get clarity. I think you hinted at it. Is it accountability?
Absolutely, yes. Capital letters, and no one likes it. And let me back off of that. So here's some major secret sauce for your viewers here. This saves you about $10,000 in 1 hour of my time.
Ooh.
This is a thread that I use in almost all of my leadership development programs with military generals across our country, with Fortune 100 global executives, with the C-suite, with chief learning officers, with billion-dollar companies, with mid-cap size companies of 500 to 1,000 employees. This is a thread that I use universally, and it's the only way I know how to answer that question. You said is accountability one of them, because it's yes. There's 5 things I've recognized about every successful business, period, non-negotiable. These 5 are there, you're successful. Take any one of these 5 away, and you will never be as successful as you can be. I see with my military National Guard clients from state to state, states use these 5, they excel. You take any one or two of them away, the state implodes, and it happens every year. For 25 years, I've been tracking the data. It never changes. Same thing with businesses, same thing with individuals. So number one is strategy. If you're going to be successful as an individual, as a spouse, as a family, as a business, in politics, in your neighborhood, wherever, it starts with strategy. What's my game plan? Clarity of strategy goes to number two. It's the word operational. Operational is the second thing that leads you to success, because it's going to be all your operational systems and processes and procedures and any technology and the internet and the cloud systems, and et cetera. It's all those things you will then start to bring in as appropriate to help you to accomplish your strategic game plan. Third thing then is going to be, in essence, the behaviors. Once you have a strategy, business mission statements, example of a strategy, game plan of strategy, operational systems now are created and deployed to help you to execute and accomplish that strategy. Then the third thing is behavior. What are the behaviors, the things you have to do to be successful? I mean, you and I come from the world of training, and that's a billion-dollar industry, folks. And that billions of dollars is typically spent on this third word I just gave you. It's all behaviors. Trying to change people from the old behaviors to new behaviors, trying to train people on appropriate behaviors. If you're in an organization that has compliance or OSHA, or government regulations, all of that crap is built around what are the acceptable behaviors or not. Which then, those three, a lot of people in management know, and anyone who teaches in a college knows those three if they teach business and management leadership. And a lot of people in colleges that teach business management leadership, they're great academics, but if they had to sign a check, they'd be out of business tomorrow, because most of them have never signed the front of a check. They've signed backs of checks, which is a whole different human being. You sign the front of a check gives you a whole mentality on things. I would suggest everyone in Congress, if they've never signed the front of a business check, they should be fired from Congress immediately, because it would instantly change how they look at everything they do in Congress. That's the first three. But the difference are the next two words, and only a small percentage of people get it. And that's why you and I have our businesses and have the ability to influence and impact so many people, because we get all five of them. But the fourth word is execution. Someone has to get off their butt and do this. Someone has to know how to do this. Someone has to know what bullshit sounds like and looks like, pardon my language. But that's the problem on our planet today. There's a whole lot of people that look pretty on the internet, are great at marketing, but they haven't done crap. You know, they want to sell you to come to the whatever, because they'll teach you something that they've never even done. But that's okay, because, again, stupidity loves stupidity. But that's execution. Who really executes and does these things? Again, study super athletes, study super musicians, study super business people, and you'll recognize that they don't typically hang out with mediocre and dumb people. They hang out with other people that they believe execute at such a high level, they want to be around them, because by hanging around those people, it brings their game up. And the fifth word is what you started and asked me, and that's accountability. To be successful, you have to have accountability mechanisms. Now, let me unbundle this one for a second. Whenever accountability starts with someone pointing their finger and saying, I'm going to hold you accountable, you will never have a successful organization, family, whatever. Because the person holding someone accountable is a part of the accountability universe, but it's way down the food stream. Accountability first starts by individuals, self-accountability. People having the internal moral compass and values and work ethic and passion and credibility, which is a fleeting variable on the planet today. So having self-accountability to know what's right and to stand up for it and say it, even though a lot of times it may be politically very incorrect, because a lot of times what you hear in the media is not the majority, and it's usually not even truly intelligent people. What it is a very vocal minority that's trying to manipulate people so that no one catches the fact that no one's holding them accountable for the rhetoric and crap coming out of their fingers and mouth. So self-accountability. Then it goes to peer accountability. Then it goes to systems of accountability. It can go to customer accountability. And then it can go to supervisory or organizational or management or parental accountability. But that person says, I'm going to hold you accountable. Yes, we need that. But that's way down the food stream. So in your life, in your organization, if it starts with someone having to hold you accountable first, that's why you're never going to be successful, whether it's losing weight, getting off of drugs, getting off your butt, and getting a real job and a real life taking care of yourself. If you're always waiting for someone else to do this first, never going to get there. And some political parties love to do that, because then people become dependent upon them to make their life possible, and you don't realize what's happening is that they're actually putting you down. We live in a globe today of massive slavery. But people don't understand, when you are dependent upon someone else for your livelihood, you're a slave to them. And that's what we have. So if you can stand up on your own, it's okay, yeah, maybe I want a hand up, not a hand out, then we can become better. And that's one of the things that grew, I think, gravitated you and I together 5 years ago. When we first met, you came to one of my business boot camps, and you had a baby daughter with you. And you didn't say, well, I'm not going to go learn how to be better because I just gave birth to a child. You said, screw this crap. She's in tow with me. Osmosis. She's going to learn by sitting in the room. I mean, so again, you're living proof of this. So I said also for your listeners and viewers to realize, Natalie's a rock star. Listen to what she's saying. She's going to give you the real foundation to launch off success. So again, another response to your question. Hopefully I didn't get too animated for your viewers.
No, you're good. You're good. That's why I wanted you here, because I know you're going to give it out. So let's talk about success. Clearly, we all have potential in something. And a lot of what you and I do, and especially you, of course, is business, government, you mentioned number 3, behavior, change management, and all of that good stuff when it comes to, I don't like this term, but let's just use the term, human capital. However, you also mentioned your background, and we know that many people, they don't necessarily want to be in business. They don't necessarily want to be entrepreneurs. So is there a difference in everything that you've just said between a person who wants to be an entrepreneur, the person who wants to be the best father in the world, the person who wants to be the best CPA in the world, or the person who wants to be the best actor in the world? Is there any kind of difference?
No difference. Absolutely no difference. The application of those 5 work no matter who you are. And you're right, not everyone wants to be in business to themselves. I do a lot of work, for example, with the agricultural marketplace across the globe, and here in the United States and Canada, and with farmers. And I make the comment a lot of times, if you want to understand entrepreneurialism, study a farmer, because they're ground central of entrepreneurialism. How do you make something happen out of nothing? And how do you always look at everything you're doing and everything around you and every resource, every person and every variable to be good stewards of it, but to get maximum ROI. So if I want to be a great parent strategically, then what's my game plan? What are the resources around me to be a great parent? That's operational. Behaviorally, what do I need to do? When do I need to do it? How do I need to do it? How do I become mindful of everything I do to benchmark the next time off of the last time to get better at what I do? That's behavior. How do I execute greatness? Again, that's execution. I can't wait for someone else to do this. And how do I hold myself accountable? What systems can I use? Who else can help me hold accountable? If I want to be a great actor, I want to be a great musician, a great athlete. Absolutely. And this can be applied for everyone. I love it. I mean, Taylor Swift would be a great example. She has more Instagram followers than anyone on the planet right now. She has money that her grandkids can't spend, given the fact she's not married, so it tells you how long that's going to last. I mean, everyone that dates her knows the punchline. You're going to be the next #1 hit song on the planet when she breaks up with you. But she's a brilliant young businesswoman who realized, I'm going to move my family. So as a teenager, she got her family excited to move to Nashville because she realized that was ground central for where she wanted to be. But more importantly, she realized singing songs is one conduit to success. I'll make money that way. But the real way you make money is not singing someone else's song. It's writing and owning the songs. So that's why Dolly Parton became her mentor, because Dolly Parton owns the doggone planet. Brilliant woman. So again, what is you trying to accomplish? So I love it. Yes, it applies to everyone. And that's probably also one of the problems people have, is that they don't look at what the core model to success is, because they think, well, it works for that person, and so I'm not them, I can't use it. Or that person is better looking or smarter than me, or is a trust baby, or has family connections, or, whatever the or is. But no, unbundle and study success. That's what you and I do, is we study success. Mm-hmm. Again, American Indian heritage is a fascination of mine. So in every issue of my magazine, I typically have a tribal Indian chief, principal CEO of a tribe, write an article on success from their heritage standpoint. Mm-hmm. I always have a pro athlete, a pro musician, or an entertainer. I have a New York Times bestselling author. So there's a formula to the mix of write for my magazine, but the common thread goes back to your question, and that is no. The map to success works everywhere. Richard Branson, I've written 2 books with him. He's written for my magazine many times. He has started 4 different businesses completely unrelated to the previous. Each one's become a billion-dollar organization. And he did it because he understood the map of how you build a business. So I can go on forever. No, there is a clear map of what gets you there. The debate is, people want to debate some of the variables, because the reality is they don't want to get off their butt and do it.
So then the next question, of course, is, since you mentioned performance, you mentioned it really doesn't matter where you are. One of my key concepts is that in order to perform at your highest possible levels, whatever you're doing, is that you need to be authentic. And you just mentioned, don't compare yourself and all of that. So when I talk about be you, that's what I'm referring to. Be you. Don't worry about what anybody else is doing. Don't try to be an athlete if you don't enjoy it. Don't try to write music if you can't write, but be the best you can in what you do. Would you agree to that, or would you argue with that?
Absolutely. And I think, again, you go back and think of, the player capability index form that I created as a performance psychologist. It gives me a way to get inside of any individual objectively on their level and find out kind of what I would call the operational DNA of a human being. It gives you a very clear set. If I'm talking about how to interview, hire, talent development at any level, I use that formula. So again, as I gave your listeners a minute ago, kind of go back and think of a LinkedIn profile. If you filled in as thoroughly as you could every prompt, you'll start to see who you really are so you can be the authentic you. If you wrote a really comprehensive resume, didn't just try to do a snapshot on one page, but you truly wrote your life resume, you would see who you're authentic. The problem is that everyone's looking for a shortcut to fill in the blank. Everyone's looking for a shortcut to financial wealth or independence or success or harmony or whatever they fill in the blank. And that's where you find a lot of people, they may become financially very wealthy. The problem is they're one-trick ponies, they're one-hit ponies, and they're not authentic. Yes. I mean, you're in my space of inspiration, motivation, business, keynote speakers on the planet. If I hear one more speaker, one more TED Talk about some person being in a wreck and sitting on their hood or on the front of the car or on the ground, and they looked up and had a conversation with God and, I got to be better, and here I am. I want to reach through this video camera and start bitch slapping people, because that's is the saddest, ripped off story of the last 100 years. And there are some major authors that have made some major millions of dollars stealing that story that's a made up piece of crap anyway. But people believe it because people want to believe. People that want to be better than they are, whatever that means. And that's a perfect challenge and strive point. So people want to be more, but the problem is that they hunger and they grab onto what I call a false witness, a false hope, false prophets, false leaders, that they can't really deliver the goods. They might ask the question like what you're asking or people ask of you, but can you really go deep and explain it? And if you had to teach it or train it or coach it or consult it, how far can you go? A lot of these people, they can't. They got one book, and if you really read it very well, you realize a lot of the content is pretty much ripped off from a whole lot of dead people that passed away 50 years before them that wrote about it before. I mean, again, Og Mandino, Earl Nightingale, W. Clement Stone, go back to some of the older gentlemen. You can talk about recent ones, whether it's the Zig Ziglar, the Stephen Coveys that have passed away, or whether it's the Ken Blanchards, the Brian Tracys, the John Maxwells, the Jeff Magees. I mean,
of course,
people. Yeah. And what's interesting is that it's original thought, original content applied to original real-time ways to use it. It's not someone else's hijacked content. I mean, you asked a very sensitive question. It really lights me up, because I'm so disheartened with the degree of phony BS that's out there. And in this internet world, it makes it very easy for the whole world to come to you. And TED Talks, if you took all of the phony TED Talk presenters and made them disappear, TED Talks would probably boil down to about 100 TED Talks left in the world. I mean, I have seen so many of these people that I personally, my paths have crossed, and I don't interact with them anymore because I have seen just how phony they are out there on TED doing these programs, and people going, oh my God. It's like, no. So again, it goes back to success. You've got to really vet. Use some common sense. I mean, it's amazing how common sense evidently is not very common anymore. We've all heard that line.
It doesn't exist anymore, common sense.
But it does if you go back to your word a minute ago, which is accountability, Natalie, and that's it. Yeah. People are able to play stupid because no one holds them accountable.
Right. Right.
And it's stunning. We see stuff going on in America today that's not any one person's fault. I mean, could we point to the president and blame him? A lot of people would. You want to point at the media and blame them? A lot of people would. No. Hold people accountable. I'm a big believer. If you're over the age of about 10, you got enough brain power to know what's right and wrong. And if you don't, you should be asked to step off the planet.
Woo! All righty then. Now, having said all that, especially the stepping off the planet,
that's an accountability statement.
Of course. So when we look at the world and the need for the inspiration and the motivation, you refer to it as a blank, blah, blah, blah sort of stuff. And we have hundreds of speakers, hundreds of trainers, thousands who we go to see, and they're motivating, they're inspirational at that moment. And then people go home And for about another 24 hours, maybe, they're still inspired and they're still motivated. And then they don't know what to do because there was no action step. There's no follow-up. And why do you think there is this desire, this need, almost this this reliance on somebody motivate me? And I'm not sure it has to do with the accountability piece, but there seems to be this draw of the next motivational speaker, the next inspirational speaker, whether they have meat and potatoes or just fluff. Why do you think that is? Why we're looking for that so much?
So we can go back to Socrates. Again, form of reasoning, ask questions is a faster pathway to get people to learn. Use stories to reinforce learning. People remember through stories. Trigger their emotion and you get them to cry, they'll remember you longer. 1, 2, 3, boom, there's your emotional speaker. People want the emotional speaker because they think that, again, if I affect, whether that's A or an E, if I affect the emotion of the viewer and the audience or online, and I get them to have goosebumps or cry or go, oh, wow, it was me, then the message that should be coming along parallel to the emotional component tied into that delivery, that the message will then cause them to want to take action. Now, here's your question. But then when they leave, what's there to keep and sustain them? Most motivational speakers that are really good at motivation should sell their services as a two-part service. They should do the motivation, then have someone legitimate come up after them that can actually talk to the person's heart, brain, and soul to give them the pathway to be successful. Because what you just said is the industry. In the United States after 9/11, a significant number of businesses in America stopped doing conventions and conferences. So the whole meetings industry in 2001, 2, 3, 4 almost disappeared. Convention cities, were begging anyone to come there. A lot of inspirational, motivational speakers actually went out of business. They had to go get real jobs because they didn't even have a real message to go with their motivational keynote that they had perfected. So well, how to say everything in stagecraft. And they went out of the industry. And I know a lot of them. And some of the big giant names, their businesses cratered and then things started to come back. Right. So there's a reason for us to want that. Now, there are some inspirational, motivational speakers, though, that go beyond the 1, 2, 3. Right. And when they get to the message, they do have a message with some stepping stones, with a map, with a call to action. So when people leave, they know what to do tomorrow or next week or next month. And there's reinforcement, sustainment. Those are the 2 keywords you're going to write down. Reinforcement, sustainment tools or resources to keep that message going on, whether it's an article or a blog or a podcast or video or books or e-zines or webinars or etc. Tools to keep going. Like I have a tremendous portfolio of those in my leadership and my sales programs, only 2 things that I do. So again, check me out on our website. But a lot of people don't have those. And so that's the problem. But again, it's always safer. Here's another answer, things I've heard from a lot of my elders over the years. You bring in a phenomenal name. Let's just say the late, great Zig Ziglar. He wrote for my magazine for many years, wrote the 4 to 2 my books. Before he passed away, his executive secretary, Lori Majors, reached out to me because Zig wanted her to send me 70 articles that had never been published so I can keep running them in my magazine. So again, the last page in every magazine still has an article from him in memoriam. So you bring a Zig Ziglar on to speak. He was phenomenal. He was good in every way. No one's ever going to speak ill of Zig Ziglar or Tony Robbins or Ken Blanchard or John Maxwell. Pick a name today. But if they brought in a name they didn't know, Joe Blow, Susie Q, and they might have been phenomenal, but if they didn't do a better than phenomenal job, then everyone gets stressed because we spent a ton of money and we didn't know them and they suck. But so these big people, no one's ever going to call them out. And some of these big people, like actors and musicians, while they're great, and we should respect the body work they did that made them great, there's a point at which you probably just need to shut up and disappear. Because all you're going to do is damage your brand because you don't look, sound, or act the way you did. That was the product you spent decades creating and crafting and honing. And so it works against you. So there's layers of ways to answer that question, Natalie. I greatly appreciate it. But again, it comes down to, where are you really trying to go? And that'll start to answer. But I think a lot of the inspirational, motivational speakers are put on stage and they actually do a disservice, and the business owners or the meeting planners who put them up there actually do a disservice to their audience instead of finding someone who can give them phenomenal content that will stick to the, like meat to the bones and is also inspirational, that's a twofold. Last example. When you get real content, real messaging, real, inspiration, let's say, that you can use to drive yourself down the roadway of life, view yourself as a vehicle. No matter what vehicle you own outside in your house, in your garage, down the street, whether it's a green, eco car, or whether it's a huge SUV or whatever, every vehicle actually has one common variable, and that is you've got to put fuel in it for it to move. I mean, the other day I'm in California and I get up out of my hotel and go out and get in my Mercedes to drive away, and there's a Tesla right next to me. Well, the Tesla guy's, plugged into the wall of the building. So while they might think they're being great and conserving fuel, where's that energy coming from? I'll tell you exactly where it's coming from. A power plant that's burning coal probably to give them that energy. But, let's not have that debate. So the point I'm getting at is that we need the content as the fuel that goes in us as a vehicle. We need inspiration, but think of it this way. So some viewers may not get this. You and I are old enough to understand this. Decades ago, it was common that we all put gasoline in our vehicle. But it was also common every once in a while, we would go to the automotive store and we'd get a bottle of little liquid called Spitfire or, an energy boost sort of thing to the car. And you'd pour that in once in a while. And it was supposed to help to clean out the car and the carburetor and the spark plugs. And it would give you a little extra boost of energy. That's my way of looking at what an inspirational speaker is. It's that little boost, but you're exactly right. If you don't have real fuel, that little boost is only going to get you through tomorrow. The real fuel is what gets you down the roadways of life. And so again, you want to really surround yourself with great information that's the real fuel to grow you and develop you down the road.
Mm-hmm. Hallelujah. Yes. So, last question.
According to Natalie and Jeff, you've just been blessed. I love it.
Well, last question, Jeff, because I have to ask this. My show is obviously called Misfit, and you know how I feel about social conditioning, and I think you sort of brought some of that out as well. So I consider you a misfit. That doesn't mean you agree or disagree, but would you consider yourself a misfit or not? And if yes, why? If no, why not?
Great question. I would say yes, I am a misfit. And when you think about most businesses that are started by misfits, not people that blended in and were not misfits. They saw something different than where they were, and if they didn't, they would still be employed somewhere else, so they left and started their own business. A lot of people that do excel to the top find ways to, blaze some trails, sometimes constructively, sometimes counterproductively, but I would say, yes, I'm a misfit. Part of the misfit, again, with respect, is, again, it's about being the best authentic you that you can be, back to your earlier element. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's going to put you in a position where you've either got to learn to bite your tongue and walk away from people, or you say, no, I'm going to stay here, stand up with respect, and I'm going to say my piece or challenge what they're saying or doing. I'm not going to challenge them as a personal attack. That's the problem in the world today, is there's too much personal petty attack, and everyone's getting their eyes distracted from the real issues. Of course, I think a lot of disingenuous people know exactly what they're doing, and the reason they're attacking other individuals is to deflect everyone's attention away from looking at them, because they realize that they are not an authentic you, and they're actually not even doing the job they've been hired to do, whether it's in business, in the military, or in government. Mm-hmm. I can take that off on tangents. So I love it. So I am the misfit, yes. And that misfit, though, has cost me. It's cost me clients because I didn't suck up accordingly and lie to them the way others wanted to lie to them. It has cost me awards and recognitions and organizations I've been a part of, where I have, in essence, held people accountable that years later, when they were in a key leadership role, the president of an organization called me up once and say, hey, I've got a letter in my hand that you wrote like almost 10 years ago. And you know what? I don't like what you said 10 years ago, so I want you to step down from our organization's National Leadership Council, and you're about to get the highest award in the organization this coming year at our convention, and I'm going to blackball you so you don't get it. And again, I live with those things, and so do other misfits. So I would say, yeah, I'm going to wear the mantle being a misfit proudly. Thank you.
Good, good. So we're sharing that. Now, one question, very simple. Your website is jeffreymagee.com. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Just like it's spelled on the box below my name. So it's Jeffrey, and Magee has no C. It's Magee. So jeffreymagee.com will take you to my website where all of my programs. I've got an online learning management system involved for self-development, my books, my audios, my articles, things you can sign up for that are free. Because I'm also a big believer. I gift to the universe significant mental DNA via articles and white papers. I don't tease people with a little piece and you have to pay to sign up for something. So I put it out there.
Well, that is true because once I have been to your workshop and I get emails from you, and they're not just your regular emails about, hey, how you doing today? I got something to sell, but you're actually attaching white papers. You're giving hands-on advice. So thank you for that. That's very, very helpful
Thank
in
you
my
for
life.
saying so. I appreciate that. You're welcome.
All right, Jeffrey. Dr. Jeffrey Magee, Jeff. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And you shot off so many things that I know a lot of people have questions. They will probably get in touch with you through your website or
Appreciate it
on
very much.
social media. And if I get any questions about you, I'll send them your way for sure.
Thank you.
So, thank you. And everybody who's listening, who's watching, thank you. You know that there's one thing that I value highly, 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 and that is time. Dr. Jeffrey Magee just gave us his time. And more than that, he also gave us all his mental DNA. But you're watching or you're listening, you're also giving me your time. And I appreciate that. And you know how to find me as well. Easy to find, natalieforrest.com. So until next time, just make the best of who you are and live out loud. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye, Jeff.